Simon Sheikh, welcome into Breaking Politics, and thank you for coming into this.
Good to be with you.
Tell us, how's the rough and tumble of federal politics?
Well, it's an exciting campaign in the ACT, one that's obviously nationally significant. We're on the front line here in Canberra when it comes to stopping Tony Abbott either getting total control or effective control of the Senate. That's something that Fairfax have been reporting recently, and it's something that Canberrans really care about.
And we'll come to it in a second. There are a couple of controversies that you managed to walk in even before you're elected. This suggestion that you used political science lectures at the ANU to promote your case. Tell us, what is the truth about those claims? What actually happened? Sure. And was it a reasonable thing to do?
Well, it's all been dealt with now very informally by the university. I regularly give speeches, including on campus, and I'll continue to do so because it's very important that university students get active in politics. For decades, we've been seeing campuses as a space where people get involved, and this election here in the ACT is particularly important. My focus when I'm on campus is enrolling people to vote, because in the ACT there are over 16,000 people either not on the electoral roll or not correctly on the roll, and that's important because this election will be determined by far less numbers than that.
I think the case in question became controversial because your wife, Anna Rose, is a co-convener of a leadership course on campus. What do you say to those who say, Simon Sheikh was just piggybacking on her position there to promote his own cause?
Well, as a senior course co-convener, he is the Pro-Vice-Chancellor of the university. He was the one who had the idea of inviting me. He is the one who did invite me, and he is the one who makes the final decisions on the course. She declared her conflict of interest up front, so really no dramas there. And that's been dealt with informally with the university. They've said that this is now all resolved and there's no dramas here.
The media in some segments has been very keen to talk about your past with the Australian Labor Party, now of course a Greens candidate in the Senate. Tell us, what's the truth of your time with the Labor Party? How long did you spend with them? How passionate were you about them? How do you now look back on that time?
Well, again, this is one that's already been dealt with as well. I was a teenager at the time, really quite a long time ago, and it's not the only thing I'm sure that I regret from those teenage years. My values are Greens values. They are values about the Australian fair go, about the egalitarian social contract, about environmental sustainability, about social justice. These are the things that I'm passionate about. And if you look at the political system today, it's so obvious as to why the Greens are the real choice for people who believe in those values.
So you regret your 4 years with the Labor Party?
Well, it wasn't 4 years. That's already been put on the record.
What was it, by the way?
Well, it was 2 years.
Right.
That's what the Labor Party's own record suggests. But really that's neither here nor there, because people do grow over the course of their life, particularly from their teenage years, into getting much more involved in community campaigning. My time as a campaigner for the community, leading campaigns on a whole range of important issues like mental health reform, investing in clean energy, showed me just how we can go about making social change.
OK, usually Green Senate candidates in the ACT wouldn't be getting much of a run in the Australian newspaper, but you've managed to get these controversies in there no problem. Now, we can find plenty of people in this place who believe the Australian newspaper is out to get them. Are you now one of them, do you think?
Well, I've had a long history with the Australian newspaper, and that's not going to change anytime soon. But I don't have any particular worries here. I mean, what is written in the Australian is seen by people these days through a certain lens. This is a newspaper that has talked about how important it is for the Greens to be destroyed. Any newspaper that says that has obviously got an editorial line. But in Canberra, they don't make much of an impact. In Canberra, we're concerned about issues like Tony Abbott's job cuts. We're staring down the barrel of the kinds of job cuts in the public sector that are so significant they would hurt the rest of our economy. In 1996-97, the last time the Liberals came to power, so bad were their job cuts in Canberra that we were in recession. That hurts small businesses, it hurts independent contractors, tradespeople, it destroys the value of homes in Canberra. These are the types of things that are actually far more important to the voters here in Canberra.
Now, Get Up would be one hell of a training ground for a political wannabe, a person who wants to hone their political skills. Tell us, what did it teach you, and what Get Up skills are you now using?
Well, in my time in community campaigning, preceding Get Up but also during Get Up, I learnt a lot about the breadth of the issues that people care about, the breadth of issues and the way they're interconnected. Our values, social justice values, environmental sustainability values, are really at the forefront of every piece of public policy that's on the table right now. But obviously I've also learnt a lot about movement politics, about the way in which we bring people together to make significant social change. At the last election, 1.7 million people voted Green. Imagine what we can do when we move people from not only voting Green, but also participating in our election campaigns, participating in our party. And that's what we're doing here in the ACT. We've already got more than 500 people signed up to volunteer, hundreds who've already gotten out there on the ground. Our office is already absolutely full because this campaign is energising people. The Liberal Party at the last election broke quota by just 38 votes. This is the tightest Senate race in the country.
OK, and Senate numbers are likely to matter after the next election. If Tony Abbott wins government, as every opinion poll says he almost certainly will, whether he has a majority in the Senate is going to really matter. What do you think is the likely Senate makeup in terms of Tony Abbott's power post-September?
Well, the current polls are not very attractive to look at. The current polls suggest either total control or control with a small number of very far right-wing parties. That should be of concern. But the Greens, by being successful here in the ACT, in addition to other important races, including South Australia and Western Australia, can put an effective roadblock in place to the most extreme of Tony Abbott's agenda. We saw when John Howard had total control of the Senate just how bad that is for our society and our democracy. And that's what really matters here in Canberra, because we understand we are on the front line of stopping the most extreme of Tony Abbott's agenda.
Of course, you say you'll do that. Tony Abbott's agenda is not all traditional extreme. In fact, Tony Abbott has by far the most generous paid parental leave scheme.
And also the most unaffordable, as we've seen today. We will work with whatever government is in place. That's an important thing to remember. Tempering the extremes of a government who has too much control is a role that the Greens have played very successfully in the past. Now, on the question of paid parental leave, the science, the research, the public policy, positive outcomes are clear. 6 months is the way to go. But the best way to achieve 6 months paid parental leave is to expand on the government scheme of 18 weeks at the moment. The Coalition's policy has been shown today to be far too expensive, and the Greens' approach to this is both fair but also fiscally responsible at least 1/5 of the cost of Tony Abbott's, but now, as a result of today's costing, perhaps less.
Talking about news around today, carbon tax cuts that we were expecting in 2015 may well be gone. The carbon pricing scheme, given the European price, appears to be in some trouble. Are you worried that the Greens are going to be tarred with having played a pivotal role in a failed carbon scheme?
Not at all. Generations in the future will look back on this time of Australian politics as a crucial time. I think they'll forget about the argy-bargy nature of the last few years, and they'll remember the fact that we finally took action on climate change. Because if we don't invest in clean energy, we're simply not going to make the transition that is going to be absolutely vital to our future. Now, on the future of carbon pricing, if Tony Abbott is to repeal the carbon price, which he'll need the Senate control or effective control to do, then what will happen when it comes to the compensation and household assistance package? What happens to the income tax threshold? Does it fall way below its current figure? What happens, therefore, to those Australians who get hurt by that?
OK, we know we've seen you champion and lead many issues in your role with Get Up, but what issue above any other puts fire in your belly?
My upbringing really defines the values that I have of economic fairness and social justice, environmental sustainability. I grew up with a mother who suffered from mental health issues. That was challenging. Growing up in public housing was challenging. It built empathy, and it showed me that above all else, the way in which we treat people is so important. We've become a less caring society over the last few decades, and that's of concern to me. Income inequality is the key driver, growing income inequality, is the key driver of poor social outcomes across the board. Whether it comes to health outcomes, whether it comes to crime and social stability, the more income inequality we have, the worse we are as a society. And what we've seen, particularly in the last few years, is that divergence in the wealth of Australians. The mining industry have driven up the value of the Australian dollar, which has hurt everybody else in the community, have been at the coal face here of trying to make our society worse. And I think it's so important that we try to make sure we bring back that egalitarian social contract that has been so important in our history. Now, of course, in addition to that, and really linked to that, is the issue of climate change and the way we invest in renewable energy. These are the things that are going to make a long-term impact on our society.
The mining industry is to blame?
Well, the mining industry is to blame very strongly for the rise in the Australian dollar, and that's hurting our manufacturing sector. That's a commonly known fact and well spoken about now. The challenge we have is that just as the time of royalties would have raised more, we switched to a profits-based approach. It's as if the mining industry is always one step ahead of the Australian government. Now, the mining industry, by the way, has done good things for our country as well. But what we've got to do is have a sustainable and stable approach to the mining industry, and that's where it's so important that our tax scheme actually works.
Simon Sheikh, don't doubt we'll be talking more in the future. Thank you for coming into the Breaking Politics studio today.
Good to be with you.